Kate Morrison stood in the center of the massive chamber and felt very small. The walls rose high above her head, made of some kind of crystal that caught the light and threw it back in strange colors. Around her in a great circle sat the representatives of dozens of alien species, each one more impressive than the last. To her left, the Vrex Queen Speaker towered over everyone else. Her body was like a giant insect, with 6 legs and arms that moved in ways that made Kate's stomach turn. Her head was covered in what looked like armor, but Kate knew it was actually her skull. 2 large eyes stared down at the human delegation without blinking. On her right, the Thrakari war chief sat on a throne made of black metal. He was huge, with 4 arms and skin that looked like it was made of stone. Scars covered his face and arms, each one a mark of honor in his warrior culture. His red eyes glowed with what Kate had learned was amusement, but it looked more like anger to her. Behind the war chief, a being of pure light floated in the air. This was Zarthol the Lumina. Representative. The Lumina had no solid bodies, existing as energy patterns that could think and speak. When Zarthol moved, trails of light followed, creating beautiful patterns that hurt to look at directly. Kate took a deep breath and looked down at the papers in her hands. She had practiced this speech 100 times, but standing here in front of these creatures made her feel like a child trying to talk to adults. Behind her, Ryan Hayes and Commander Alex Turner stood ready to help, but she knew this moment was hers alone. Honored members of the Galactic Council, Kate began, her voice echoing in the huge chamber. I come before you today to present humanity's formal application for membership in the Galactic Federation. The sound that came from the Vrex Queen Speaker was like metal being scraped against stone. Kate had learned this was laughter among the Vrex, but it sounded horrible to human ears. Other delegates joined in with their own versions of amusement. The Thrakari war chief pounded his 4 fists against his chest, making a sound like thunder. Kate continued despite the interruption. Humanity has achieved faster-than-light travel and has established colonies on 12 worlds. We have developed technologies for terraforming, advanced medicine, and peaceful energy production. Our species has shown its ability to work together and solve problems through cooperation rather than conflict. Cooperation! The Thrakari war chief's voice boomed through the chamber. What good is cooperation when the galaxy is full of dangers? Where are your great battles? Where are your conquered enemies? Kate had expected this question. We believe that strength comes from building rather than destroying. Our colonies are peaceful and prosperous. We have never needed to conquer others to prove our worth. This brought even more laughter from the assembled aliens. The Vrex Queen Speaker clicked her mandibles together rapidly. Peaceful and prosperous, she repeated in a voice like grinding gears. Tell me, little human, what happens when someone stronger than you decides they want your peaceful worlds? We would defend ourselves, Kate replied, though she knew how weak that sounded. With what? The war chief leaned forward on his throne. Your species has barely mastered space travel. Your weapons are primitive. Your ships are slow and weak. You have no real military to speak of. Zarthol floated forward, his light growing brighter. The Council has reviewed your species' capabilities. You have achieved basic spaceflight, yes, but nothing more. Your fastest ships take weeks to travel distances that our vessels cover in days. Your weapons cannot penetrate even the simplest energy shields. Your technology is centuries behind the least advanced species in this council. Kate felt heat rising in her cheeks. We may not have the most advanced technology, but we have other qualities. We are adaptable, we learn quickly, we never give up. The laughter grew louder. A delegate from the Corvin Empire, a species that looked like walking crystals, spoke up. Adaptable? You have existed in space for less than a century. Some of us have been traveling between stars for millions of years. Learning quickly is meaningless if you start from nothing. Added another delegate, this one from a species Kate didn't recognize. A child may learn quickly, but they are still a child. The Thrakari war chief stood up from his throne. Even sitting, he had been impressive, but standing, he was terrifying. I have a suggestion, he said, his voice carrying easily through the chamber. Perhaps humans would be better served as a protected species. The Thrakari Empire would be willing to oversee their development. We could ensure their safety while they grow into something more substantial. Kate felt her heart sink. A protected species was basically a polite way of saying slavery. The Thrakari would take control of human worlds and treat humans like pets or children who couldn't take care of themselves. That will not be necessary, Kate said, fighting to keep her voice steady. Humanity can take care of itself, can it? Zarthel's light pulsed in what Kate had learned was the lumina equivalent of a smile. Your species controls a tiny corner. Of one spiral arm, you have no significant allies. Your technology is primitive, your military is weak. What exactly do you bring to this council that we should want? Kate looked around the chamber at the faces and forms of dozens of alien species. Some looked amused, others bored, but none looked impressed. She had known this would be difficult, but she had hoped that humanity's achievements would count for something. We bring ourselves, she said finally. We bring our ideas, our creativity, our determination. We bring a different way of looking at problems. The Vrex Queen speaker made that terrible scraping sound again. Ideas? Creativity? The galaxy is not a philosophy class, human. It is a dangerous place where only the strong survive. Your kind would last perhaps a few years before being conquered or destroyed. The war chief nodded in agreement. The Thrakari have conquered 17 species. We have fought wars that lasted centuries. We have weapons that can crack planets and fleets that number in the thousands. What do humans have that could possibly impress us? Kate straightened her shoulders. We have something you don't expect. We have the ability to surprise you. The chamber fell silent for a moment, then erupted in even louder laughter. The Thrakari war chief was laughing so hard he had to sit back down. Even the normally serious Lumina representative seemed to be flickering with amusement. Zarthel's voice cut through the laughter. Surprise us? Little human, we have seen everything the galaxy has to offer. We have witnessed the rise and fall of empires. We have seen weapons that can destroy stars and technologies that can reshape reality itself. What could a species that has barely learned to leave its home planet possibly show us that we haven't seen before? Kate looked down at her papers, then back up at the assembled aliens. I guess you'll have to wait and see. The council voted immediately. The result was exactly what Kate had expected but had hoped to avoid: unanimous rejection. Not a single species voted in favor of human membership. As the three humans prepared to leave the chamber, Zarthel floated over to them. A word of advice. Ambassador Morrison, when you return to your people, tell them to be more realistic about their place in the galaxy. The universe is vast and full of dangers. Perhaps it would be wise to accept the Thrakari offer of protection before something worse finds you. Kate looked up at the being of light. Thank you for the advice. I'll be sure to pass it along. As they walked toward the exit, Kate could hear the aliens already moving on to other business. Humanity had been dismissed as easily as swatting a fly. Behind her, the laughter continued. 3 months had passed since the humiliating rejection at the Galactic Council when the first Thrakari ships appeared at the edge of human space. Lisa Parker was sitting in her office on New Denver, reviewing the monthly crop reports, when her assistant burst through the door with a face white as paper. Governor Parker, you need to see this immediately, the young man said, his hands shaking as he handed her a datapad. Lisa looked at the screen and felt her blood turn to ice. The long-range sensors had detected something that should have been impossible. A massive fleet of alien vessels had just dropped out of hyperspace near the outer edge of the system. The ships were unlike anything in the human database, but their design was unmistakable. They were Thrakari. The lead ship was enormous, easily 10 times the size of the largest human vessel. Its hull was black as night and covered in what looked like spikes and weapons. The name Bloodfang was painted across its side in symbols that the computer translated automatically. Behind it, hundreds of smaller ships formed a perfect attack formation. Lisa's hands were steady as she activated the emergency communication system. Within minutes, she was connected to Admiral Blake at Earth Defense Command. The Admiral's face on the screen looked grim. "We're seeing the same thing here, Governor Parker. Long-range sensors show Thrakari fleets at 17 different human colonies. This isn't a random attack. This is a coordinated invasion." Before Lisa could respond, every screen in the room flickered and went dark. Then a new image appeared. It was the Thrakari war chief from the Council, but now he was wearing full battle armor and standing on what was clearly a ship's bridge. Humans. The war chief's voice boomed through every speaker in the colony. "I am General Korth of the Thrakari Empire. You have been judged and found wanting. Your species lacks the strength to exist independently in this galaxy." Lisa watched in horror as the general gestured with one of his 4 arms. Behind him, she could see the bridge of his ship, with dozens of Thrakari warriors working at strange controls. "You will surrender immediately and accept Thrakari rule, or you will be destroyed. You have 1 hour to decide." The transmission ended, leaving Lisa staring at a blank screen. Around her, the government staff looked to her for answers she didn't have. New Denver was a farming colony with a population of 2 million. Their only defenses were a few patrol ships and some orbital platforms that were meant to stop asteroids, not military vessels. "What do we do?" asked her assistant. Lisa looked out the window at the city below. People were going about their daily lives, unaware that their world was about to change forever. "Send a message to all citizens. Tell them to stay calm and remain in their homes. Then contact the defense platforms and tell them to prepare for combat." "Governor, those platforms weren't designed for military action. They won't stand a chance against those ships." "I know," Lisa said quietly, "but we have to try." 30 minutes later, the Thrakari demonstrated exactly what would happen to any human world that chose to resist. A single ship broke away from the main fleet and moved toward Kepler-7, an uninhabited moon on the edge of the system. The moon was nothing special, just a chunk of rock that the colonists had planned to mine someday. The Thrakari ship fired once. A beam of pure energy lanced out from its weapons and struck the moon. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the entire moon began to glow. The rock heated up so fast that it turned into gas, and within minutes, Kepler-7 was nothing but a cloud of glowing particles. The message was clear. This was what happened to worlds that didn't surrender. Lisa's communication system came alive with calls from other human colonies. The governors of New Boston and Terra Nova were both on the line, their faces filled with the same fear that Lisa felt. "They destroyed Kepler-7, said Governor Martinez from New Boston. "The entire moon is gone? How do we fight something like that?" "We don't," replied Governor Chun from Terra Nova. "We can't. Our weapons can't even scratch their shields. I'm going to recommend surrender to my people." Lisa understood the logic, but something inside her refused to accept it. "What about Earth? What about the Defense Force?" "The Defense Force is already trying to fight them." Admiral Blake's voice cut into the conversation. "We've lost 12 ships in the first engagement. Their shields are impenetrable and their weapons are devastating. Every time we attack, we lose more ships." Over the next few hours, Lisa watched the systematic destruction of human resistance. The Thrakari moved from system to system like a wave of destruction. Their ships were faster than anything humans had built, and their weapons were beyond anything human science had developed. The patrol ships from New Denver launched anyway, even though everyone knew it was hopeless. Lisa watched on her screens as the 6 small vessels approached the massive Thrakari fleet. The human ships fired their missiles and energy weapons, but the attack simply bounced off the alien shields without causing any damage. The Thrakari response was swift and brutal. Beams of energy reached out from their ships and touched the human vessels. Each ship that was hit simply disappeared, vaporized so completely that not even debris remained. "All ships destroyed," reported the communications officer, his voice barely above a whisper. "No survivors." Lisa closed her eyes and tried to think. The Thrakari had given them an hour to decide, and that hour was almost up. She could surrender and hope that the aliens would treat her people fairly, or she could fight and watch her world be destroyed like Kepler-7. "Governor, we're receiving surrender signals from New Tokyo. Harmony and New Berlin, her assistant, reported, "They're all giving up," Lisa nodded. It was the logical choice. The Thrakari had shown they could destroy entire worlds, and human weapons couldn't even touch their ships. Fighting would only result in the deaths of millions of innocent people. She was about to give the order to surrender when a new message appeared on her screen. It was from Earth, but not from Admiral Blake or any other military leader. The message was from her brother Jake, who worked in some kind of classified government program. "Lisa, don't surrender yet. Help is coming. Tell everyone to hold on just a little longer." Lisa stared at the message. Jake had always been involved in secret projects, but she had never imagined he was working on anything that could help in a situation like this. What could Earth possibly have that could stand against the Thrakari? "Governor, they're demanding an answer," said her communications officer. "The hour is almost up." Lisa looked out the window again. The city below was quiet now, with most people staying inside their homes. But she could see some activity at the spaceport where civilian ships were being loaded with families trying to escape. "Tell them we need more time to consider," she said finally. The response came immediately. General Korth's face appeared on her screen again, and this time he looked angry. "You have had enough time, human. Surrender now or face the consequences." "We need to discuss this with our people," Lisa said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Give us another hour." "You have 30 minutes, Korth replied. "After that, your world will share the fate of your moon." The transmission ended, leaving Lisa with a terrible choice. She could surrender and hope for the best, or she could trust her brother's message and risk the lives of everyone on her world dot around the galaxy. Other species watched the Thrakari invasion with interest but no intention of helping. The Vreks saw an opportunity to claim the mineral rights to human worlds once the conquest was complete. The Lumina considered the invasion a natural part of galactic evolution that should not be interfered with. Even species that might have felt sympathy for humanity were too afraid of the Thrakari to risk their own worlds. The Thrakari Empire had conquered 17 species over the centuries, and no one had ever successfully resisted them. Lisa made her choice. She would trust Jake and hope that whatever help he had promised would arrive in time. The alternative was surrender to an enemy that had shown no mercy to anyone who opposed them. "Tell General Korth that we reject his offer," she said quietly. "Tell him that humans will never surrender." Her assistant stared at her in shock. "Governor, they'll destroy us all." "Maybe," Lisa replied, looking up at the stars where the Thrakari fleet waited. "But at least we'll die as free people." The countdown to destruction had begun. Deep beneath the Pentagon, Admiral Susan Blake sat at the head of a table surrounded by Earth's highest military commanders. The room was filled with the quiet hum of computers and the tension of desperate people facing impossible odds. On the main screen, red dots showed the advance of Thrakari forces through human space. Half of their colonies had already fallen, and the alien fleet was moving toward the core worlds. "How long before they reach Earth?" Admiral Blake asked, though. She already knew the answer would be bad. General Murphy, head of strategic planning, looked up from his tablet. "At their current rate of advance, 72 hours. Maybe less if they decide to skip the remaining outer colonies and come straight for us." "What about our fleets?" "We've lost 60% of our ships," replied Admiral Torres from the Navy. "Every engagement ends the same way. Our weapons can't penetrate their shields, and their weapons destroy our ships with single hits. We're not fighting a war, we're being slaughtered." Admiral Blake nodded grimly. She had seen the reports from every battle. Human ships would attack with everything they had, only to watch their weapons bounce harmlessly off Thrakari shields. The return fire would vaporize human vessels so completely that rescue operations were impossible. "What about evacuation?" asked General Harris. "Can we get people off the core worlds?" "Where would they go?" Admiral Torres replied. "The Thrakari have ships throughout human space. Even if we could move everyone, they'd just hunt them down later." The room fell silent. Everyone knew they were discussing the end of human civilization, but no one wanted to say it out loud. The Thrikari had proven that their technology was centuries ahead of anything humans had developed. Their ships were faster, their weapons more powerful, and their shields impenetrable. "There is one option," said a voice from the corner of the room. Everyone turned to look at Colonel Pete Johnson, who had been quiet throughout the meeting. Johnson was in charge of classified projects, the kind of work that most people in the military didn't know existed. He was a thin man with gray hair and eyes that seemed to see more than he let on. "Go ahead, Colonel," Admiral Blake said. Johnson stood up and walked to the front of the room. "For the past 15 years, we've been working on something called Project Nightfall. It's been so classified that only a dozen people in the entire government know about it." He activated his tablet and the main screen changed to show what looked like a ship, but unlike any vessel anyone in the room had ever seen. It was sleek and dark, with curves that seemed to flow like water. Strange symbols were carved into its hull, and parts of it seemed to shimmer as if they weren't quite solid. "This is the HMS Vengeance," Johnson continued. "We found the technology to build it in ruins on Titan. The ruins are ancient, older than any civilization we know of. The builders left behind artifacts that we've been studying and trying to understand." General Murphy leaned forward. "You're talking about alien technology?" "Not alien in the way we usually think of it," Johnson replied. "The beings who built this technology were human, but from so far in the past that they might as well be a different species. They achieved things that we're only beginning to understand." "What kind of things?" Admiral Blake asked. Johnson touched his tablet again, and the image changed to show technical diagrams that looked more like art than engineering. "The ship exists partially outside normal spacetime. Its hull is made from a material that phases between dimensions. Conventional weapons can't touch it because it's not entirely in our reality." "That's impossible," said Admiral Torres. "So it's faster than light travel, but we do it every day," Johnson replied. "The ancients who built this technology understood physics in ways we're just beginning to glimpse. They built machines that work by principles we can barely comprehend." The room was silent as everyone stared at the strange ship on the screen. It looked beautiful and terrifying at the same time, like something from a dream or a nightmare. "What about weapons?" asked General Harris. "The quantum cascade cannon," Johnson said, bringing up another diagram. "It doesn't just destroy matter, it unmakes it at the subatomic level. Anything it hits ceases to exist, not just in this reality but in all realities. There's no defense against it because it attacks the fundamental structure of existence itself." "Have you tested it?" Admiral Blake asked. Johnson hesitated. "We've run simulations, but we've never fired it at anything important. The ship has never been in combat. Most of its systems are still experimental." "So you're asking us to bet the survival of humanity on an untested weapon built with technology we don't understand?" "Yes," Johnson said simply. "Because it's the only chance we have." At that moment, the door opened and a woman in a lab coat entered. She was young, maybe 30, with dark hair and eyes that burned with intelligence. This was Dr. Helen Cruz, the chief engineer on Project Nightfall. "Admiral, we've been monitoring the Thrikari advance," she said without preamble. "They'll be here in less than 60 hours. If we're going to use the Vengeance, we need to deploy it now. Dr. Cruz, in your professional opinion, what are the odds of success?" Admiral Blake asked. Helen looked around the room at the faces of Earth's military leaders. "Honestly, I don't know. The ship works on principles that violate everything we thought we knew about physics. It might be the most powerful weapon ever created, or it might tear itself apart the moment we fire it." "What about the crew?" asked General Murphy. "Who's going to pilot this thing?" "I am," said another voice from the doorway. "Commander Jake." Morrison entered the room, wearing a uniform that looked different from standard military dress. He was tall and lean, with the kind of calm confidence that came from years of dangerous missions. He was also Ambassador Kate Morrison's brother, though most people didn't know about that connection. "Commander Morrison has been training with the Vengeance for 3 years, Johnson explained. "He knows the ship better than anyone." Jake walked to the front of the room and stood next to the screen showing his ship. I've handpicked a crew of volunteers. Everyone knows this is likely a one-way mission. The ship's capabilities are beyond anything we've tested, and we don't know what will happen when we engage the Thrakari. What's the plan? Admiral Blake asked. Simple, Jake replied. We take the Vengeance directly into the heart of their fleet and destroy their command ship. Cut off the head and the body dies. That's suicide, said Admiral Torres. Maybe, Jake agreed. But it's the only plan that has any chance of working. Our conventional forces can't touch them. The Vengeance is built on technology that's so advanced it might as well be magic. If it can't stop them, nothing can. Dr. Cruz stepped forward. The ship is ready for deployment. We've loaded all the supplies and equipment we can. The crew is standing by. Admiral Blake looked around the room one more time. Every face showed the same mixture of hope and desperation. The Thrakari were coming, and humanity had no conventional way to stop them. The Vengeance was their last hope, a ship built with ancient technology that might save them or might destroy them. How long to reach the Thrakari fleet? She asked. 6 hours, Jake replied. They're gathering at the edge of the solar system for their final assault on Earth. Then God help us all, Admiral Blake said. Deploy the Vengeance. As the meeting broke up, Jake remained behind with Dr. Cruz and Colonel Johnson. The weight of humanity's survival rested on their shoulders, and they all knew that the next few hours would determine the fate of their species. Are you ready for this? Helen asked quietly. Jake looked at the image of his ship on the screen. It was beautiful and alien, a fusion of human engineering and ancient knowledge that might be their salvation or their doom. No, he said honestly, but I'm going anyway. The HMS Vengeance was about to enter combat for the first time, carrying with it the hopes and fears of an entire species. In a few hours, they would learn whether humanity's last gamble would pay off or whether the Thrakari would complete their conquest of human space. The countdown to humanity's final battle had begun. The HMS Vengeance dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the solar system like a shadow made solid. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship, watching the massive Thrakari fleet spread out before them on the main screen. Thousands of alien vessels filled the darkness of space, their hulls gleaming with weapons that had already destroyed dozens of human worlds. My God, whispered Lieutenant Amy Foster from the pilot's seat. There are so many of them, Jake nodded grimly. The Thrakari had brought their entire invasion force to finish off humanity's homeworld. The alien ships were arranged in perfect formation, with the massive command vessel Bloodfang at the center. Each ship bristled with the plasma cannons that had proven so deadly against human forces. Communications, open a channel to the Thrakari. Flagship, Jake ordered. Lieutenant Carl Davis, the weapons officer, looked up from his station. Sir, are you sure that's wise? They might detect our position. They already know we're here, Jake replied. Look at your sensors. The bridge crew checked their instruments and saw that Jake was right. The Thrakari ships were already turning toward them, their weapons charging for battle. On the main screen, the Bloodfang's massive form dominated the view as it moved closer. Channel. Open, sir, reported Sergeant Nina. Bell from the communications station. The screen flickered and showed the bridge of the Thrakari flagship. General Korth stood in the center, his forearms crossed over his massive chest. His red eyes glowed with what looked like amusement as he stared at the human vessel. So, Korth said, his voice filled with contempt, the humans send one ship to face our entire fleet. Is this supposed to be some kind of joke? No joke, General, Jake replied calmly. This is your last chance to withdraw from human space. The sound that came from Korth's throat was like rocks grinding together. It was Thrakari laughter, harsh and brutal. One ship! You humans truly are as foolish as we thought. We have studied your technology, Commander Morrison. We know exactly what your vessels can do. Do you? Jake asked. Korth gestured with one of his arms, and Jake could see the bridge of the alien ship behind him. Dozens of Thrakari warriors worked at control stations, their movements precise and deadly. Your weapons cannot penetrate our shields. Your armor cannot withstand our plasma cannons. Your engines are too slow to escape us. What exactly do you think you can accomplish? Let's find out, Jake said, and nodded to Nina to cut the transmission. The screen went dark, leaving the bridge of the Vengeance in tense silence. Around them, the Thrakari fleet began to move into attack formation. The smaller ships spread out in a wide circle while the larger vessels moved to the front, their weapons glowing with deadly energy. All hands, prepare for combat, Jake announced. Over the ship's intercom. This is what we trained for. Amy Foster's hands moved over the pilot controls, but nothing seemed to happen. The ship didn't move in any direction that the crew could feel. Instead, it seemed to shift somehow, as if it was sliding between layers of reality. What's our status? Jake asked. Phasing systems are active, reported Lieutenant Davis. Hull integrity is holding at 97%. The quantum field generators are running smoothly. Good, take us closer to their flagship. The Vengeance moved forward, but not in the way normal ships move through space. Instead of pushing against the vacuum, it seemed to fold space around itself, appearing and disappearing in ways that made the bridge crew feel dizzy on the Thrakari flagship. General Korth watched the human vessel approach with growing confusion. His sensors showed the ship was there, but they couldn't get a solid reading on it. Sometimes it appeared to be made of solid matter, other times it looked like nothing more than empty space. What is that thing? He demanded of his science officer. Unknown, General, the officer replied, his voice nervous. Our sensors cannot determine its composition. It appears to be phasing in and out of normal space. Korth's eyes narrowed. Impossible. No species has that kind of technology. Should we attack, General? Yes, all ships open fire on the human vessel. The Thrakari fleet responded instantly. Hundreds of plasma cannons fired at once, filling space with beams of deadly energy. The combined firepower was enough to destroy a small moon, and it all focused on the single human ship. The crew of the Vengeance watched the attack approach on their screens. The plasma bolts looked like streams of liquid fire, beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Amy Foster gripped her controls tighter, but Jake remained calm. Steady, he said quietly. Let them come. The plasma bolts reached the Vengeance and passed right through it. The ship flickered like a ghost as the energy beams went through its hull without causing any damage. The crew felt a slight tingling sensation, but nothing more. Direct hit? Shouted the Thrakari weapons officer. On the Bloodfang? No, wait, the target is still intact. General Korth stared at his screens in disbelief. Fire again. All ships, concentrate your fire. The second barrage was even more intense than the first. Every ship in the Thrakari fleet fired at once, creating a wall of plasma that should have vaporized anything in its path. But once again, the beams passed through the Vengeance without effect. How is this possible? Korth demanded on the bridge of the Vengeance. Jake smiled grimly. Dr. Cruz, you beautiful genius, it's working perfectly. Sir, the phasing system is holding steady, reported Davis. We're operating at about 60% outside normal spacetime. Their weapons can't touch us. Then it's time to show them what we can do, Jake said. Target their lead destroyer. Fire the quantum cascade cannon. Davis's hands moved over his controls, and the ship's main weapon began to charge. The process was unlike anything the crew had experienced before. Instead of the usual hum of energy weapons, there was a sound like reality itself was tearing. Weapon. Charged and ready, sir. Fire. The quantum cascade cannon fired a beam that looked like a column of absolute darkness. It wasn't black like normal darkness, but something deeper, as if it was a hole in space itself. The beam reached out across the vacuum and touched a Thrakari destroyer. The alien ship didn't explode. It didn't break apart or catch fire. Instead, it simply stopped existing. One moment it was there, a solid vessel with thousands of warriors aboard, and the next moment there was nothing but empty space. The effect rippled outward, and two more ships that had been in close formation also vanished. What happened to the Corvin's Fang? Shouted a Thrakari officer on the flagship. I don't know, replied the sensor operator. It's gone. Not destroyed? Not damaged. Gone. General Korth felt something he had never experienced before in his long career as a warrior. Fear. The human ship had made 3 of his vessels disappear with a single shot, and he had no idea how they had done it. All ships, attack Formation 7, he ordered. Surround the human vessel. Use kinetic weapons if energy weapons don't work. The Thrakari fleet began to move, but the Vengeance was already changing position. It didn't turn or accelerate like a normal ship. Instead, it seemed to step sideways through space, appearing behind a group of Thrakari cruisers. Second target acquired, Davis reported. Firing. Another beam of darkness lanced out, and another alien ship ceased to exist. This time, the effect was even more dramatic. The ship that was hit took 4 others with it. As the quantum cascade spread through their formation, panic began to spread through the Thrakari fleet. These were warriors who had conquered 17 species, veterans of countless battles, but they had never faced anything like this. Their enemies had always been solid things that could be shot and destroyed. The Vengeance was something else entirely. "General, we should retreat," suggested one of Korth's officers. "Retreat?" Korth's voice was filled with rage. "The Thrakari do not retreat. We are the conquerors of the galaxy." But even as he spoke, another group of his ships vanished into nothingness. The human vessel moved through his fleet like a ghost, untouchable and deadly. Every time it fired, more ships disappeared. "Sir, we've lost 47 vessels," reported his tactical officer. "The enemy has taken no damage." For the first time in his career, General Korth began to understand that he might be facing something more dangerous than anything the Thrakari had ever encountered. The humans had seemed so weak, so primitive, but this ship was beyond anything his species had ever built. "Continue the attack," he ordered, but his voice lacked its usual confidence. "Find a way to destroy that ship." The battle for humanity's survival had begun, and the outcome was far from certain. The news of the Battle of Souls spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. On the crystal world of Zephyria Prime, the Galactic Council sat in emergency session as reports flooded in from across known space. The same chamber that had echoed with laughter at humanity's expense now buzzed with nervous whispers and fearful murmurs. Zarthal, the Lumina representative, floated in the center of the chamber as holographic displays showed the aftermath of the battle. Where the mighty Thrakari fleet had once been, only empty space remained. Thousands of ships had been reduced to nothing, their crews and weapons simply erased from existence. "This is impossible," clicked the Vrex Queen speaker, her mandibles chattering with anxiety. "No species has technology capable of such destruction." The Thrakari were invincible. "Apparently not," replied Ambassador Yix from the Corvan Empire, his crystalline body pulsing with worried light. "The human vessel destroyed an entire fleet without taking any damage. Our sensors couldn't even track how it moved." The chamber fell silent as they watched the recordings of the battle. The human ship appeared and disappeared like a ghost, passing through solid matter and enemy fire as if they didn't exist. Each time it fired its weapon, Thrakari vessels simply vanished. "Where did they get this technology?" demanded General Voss of the Hegemony, a species that prided itself on military might. 3 months ago, they could barely build ships that could match our cargo vessels. Now they have weapons that can unmake matter itself. Zarthal's light grew brighter as he processed the implications. "We have made a grave error in judgment. The humans were not primitive. They were hiding their true capabilities. Or they developed this technology very quickly," suggested the Vrex Queen speaker. "Perhaps they have been studying us, learning our weaknesses while we dismiss them as harmless." The debate continued for hours, but no one could explain how humanity had achieved such an impossible leap in technology. The various species that had mocked human weakness now found themselves forced to confront a new reality. The galaxy had a new power, and that power had just demonstrated its ability to destroy entire fleets on the homeworld of the Thrakari Empire. The news of General Korth's defeat sent shockwaves through the warrior culture. For the first time in their recorded history, a Thrakari fleet had been completely destroyed. The survivors who had escaped in damaged ships told stories that sounded like nightmares. The human ship was like a demon, reported Captain Zex, one of the few officers who had survived the battle. It moved through space like it was swimming through water. Our weapons passed through it like it was made of smoke. The Thrakari High Command gathered in their war room, studying the battle recordings with growing concern. These were warriors who had conquered 17 species, but they had never faced anything like the human vessel. "How many ships did we lose?" asked War Chief Grax, Korth's successor. "All of them," replied the intelligence officer. "The entire invasion fleet. Over 3,000 ships and 2 million warriors." The room fell silent. The loss was beyond catastrophic. It was the complete destruction of their most powerful military force. "What do we know about this human weapon?" Grax asked. "Almost nothing," the officer replied. "It appears to exist partially outside normal space. Our sensors couldn't get consistent readings. The weapon it used doesn't just destroy matter, it removes it from existence entirely." On dozens of other worlds, similar conversations were taking place. The Corvan Empire called emergency meetings to discuss the implications. The hegemony began reviewing their defensive strategies. Even the ancient Lumina, who had existed for millions of years, found themselves questioning what they thought. They knew about the younger species. The most dramatic reaction came from the Galactic Council itself. Within hours of receiving the battle reports, they sent an urgent message to Earth, the same body that had unanimously rejected humanity's membership application. Now desperately wanted to speak with human representatives. Ambassador Kate Morrison received the message while she was still at the human embassy on Zephyria Prime. The content was brief but revealed everything about how the galaxy's attitude toward humanity had changed. The Galactic Council requests the immediate presence of the human delegation for emergency discussions regarding recent events. Full honors will be provided for Ambassador Morrison and her staff. Kate read the message twice, hardly believing what she was seeing. 3 months ago, these same aliens had laughed at her and dismissed her species as primitive. Now they were requesting her presence with full honors. "Ma'am, there's more," said her aide Ryan Hayes. "We're receiving communication requests from dozens of species. The Vrex want to discuss mineral rights agreements. The Corvan Empire is offering technology exchanges. Even the hegemony is asking about military cooperation." Kate walked to the window of her embassy and looked out at the crystal city below. Alien beings moved through the streets, going about their daily lives, but she could see the change in their behavior. Where once they had ignored the human embassy, now groups of aliens gathered outside, staring up at the building with what looked like respect and fear. "Set up the meeting with the council," she told Ryan. "But make sure they understand that we're not the same desperate applicants who came here 3 months ago." The council chamber looked the same as before, but everything else had changed. When Kate entered, the alien delegates rose to their feet as a sign of respect. The Thrakari representative, now War Chief Grax, bowed his head in acknowledgement of her presence. "Ambassador Morrison," Zarthal's voice carried a tone of respect that had been completely absent from their first meeting. "We wish to discuss the recent events in your solar system." Kate took her place at the center of the chamber, but this time she didn't feel small. The same aliens who had towered over her before now seemed to lean away, as if afraid of getting too close. "What would you like to know?" she asked calmly. "How did your species develop such advanced technology?" asked the Vrex Queen speaker. 3 months ago, your capabilities were primitive by galactic standards," Kate smiled, remembering their previous dismissal. "Perhaps you underestimated us." "Clearly," Zarthal replied. "We wish to make amends for our previous ... misjudgment. The Council would like to offer humanity immediate membership in the Galactic Federation with full rights and privileges." The offer that humanity had desperately wanted 3 months ago was now being presented like a gift. Kate let the moment stretch out, enjoying the discomfort of the aliens who had once mocked her people. "That's very generous," she said finally, "but I'm afraid the situation has changed. Humanity is no longer interested in simply joining the Federation." The chamber erupted in surprised murmurs. The Thrakari representative leaned forward. What do you mean? We mean that we're not the same species that applied for membership 3 months ago, Kate replied. We've learned things about ourselves that even we didn't know. The technology you witnessed is just the beginning. Beginning of what? Asked the Vrex Queen speaker. Kate looked around the chamber at the faces and forms of the aliens, who had once dismissed humanity as insignificant. The beginning of a new era. The galaxy has changed, and we intend to help shape what comes next. The delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted dramatically, and they were only beginning to understand the implications. We propose a new arrangement, Kate continued. Humanity will take its place in galactic affairs, but on our own terms. We're willing to work with existing governments and species, but we won't be junior partners in someone else's system. The council chamber fell silent as the aliens absorbed this information. The species that had once laughed at human weakness now found themselves being dictated to by the very beings they had dismissed. The galaxy would never be the same. 6 months after the Battle of Sol, the galaxy had become a very different place. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the HMS Vengeance as it patrolled the outer edges of what had once been Thrakari space. The massive ship moved silently through the void, its hull shimmering with the same mysterious energy that had made it untouchable in battle. Status report, Jake asked his communications officer. All human colonies are secure, sir, reported Sergeant Nina Bell. The HMS Retribution is patrolling the Centauri sector, and the HMS Reckoning just finished escort duty for the new trade convoy. Jake nodded with satisfaction. The human fleet had grown from a single experimental vessel to a dozen ships, each one built using the ancient technology discovered on Titan, the construction yards around. Earth worked day and night to build more vessels, and each new ship pushed the boundaries of what was possible. Any word from the former Thrakari worlds? Jake asked. They're adapting well to human administration, Nina replied. Governor Parker reports that the mining operations on Thrakari Prime are ahead of schedule. The local population seems grateful for our protection. Jake smiled at the mention of his sister Lisa, after her brave stand on New Denver. She had been promoted to oversee the integration of former Thrakari territories into human space. The irony wasn't lost on him that the same aliens who had planned to enslave humanity now worked under human oversight. Sir, we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth, Nina announced. It's from Ambassador Morrison. The main screen flickered to life, showing Kate Morrison sitting in what looked like a luxurious office. Behind her, Jake could see the skyline of New Geneva, the diplomatic capital that had been built to handle humanity's new role in galactic affairs. Hello, brother, Kate said with a smile. I wanted to update you on the latest developments. Good to see you, Kate. How are things in the diplomatic world? Busy, she replied. The Galactic Council has officially recognized the new power structure. Humanity now holds 3 permanent seats on the ruling committee, and we have veto power. Over any major decisions? Jake raised an eyebrow. 3 seats? That's more than any other species has ever held. The other species insisted on it, Kate said. They're terrified of making decisions that might upset us. The Vrex representative actually suggested we should have 5 seats, just to be safe. What about the Thrakari survivors? Kate's expression grew more serious. The remaining Thrakari worlds have formally requested to join the human sphere of influence. Their new leader, someone called War Chief Dex, has offered to serve as a military advisor to our forces. Jake remembered the proud warriors who had once threatened to enslave humanity. The idea of them begging for human protection would have been laughable 6 months ago, but now it was simply the new reality. Are we accepting their offer? We're considering it, Kate replied. Having former Thrakari officers in our military might be useful. They know the galaxy better than we do, and they understand how other species think. Speaking of other species, how are they adapting to the new order? Kate's smile returned. You should see them. Jake, the same aliens who laughed at us are now studying human culture like it's the most important thing in the galaxy. There are Vrex scholars writing papers about human military tactics. The Lumina have started philosophical discussions about human nature and potential. And the Corvan Empire? They've offered to share their most advanced crystal technology with us. In exchange, they want our protection against any future threats. It seems everyone wants to be on humanity's good side now. Jake walked to the viewport and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, dozens of alien species were working frantically to understand how humanity had achieved such power. They studied human ships, human tactics, and human technology, but they were missing the most important point. Kate, do they understand what really happened? He asked. What do you mean? The technology we found on Titan, it wasn't alien at all. It was human, but from so far in the past that it might as well have been from another species entirely. Kate nodded slowly. Dr. Cruz has been studying the ruins more carefully. She thinks the beings who built that technology were our ancestors, but from a time before recorded history. They achieved things that we're only beginning to understand, and they left it for us to find. It seems that way. Like they knew we would eventually need it. Jake thought about the implications. Humanity wasn't just another species that had stumbled onto advanced technology. They were the inheritors of a legacy that stretched back millions of years, a legacy that had been waiting for them to evolve enough to claim it. What's our next move? He asked. We keep building, Kate replied. The shipyards are working on new designs based on the Titan technology. Dr. Cruz thinks we can create vessels that exist entirely outside normal spacetime. And that's just the beginning. The beginning of what? Kate's expression grew thoughtful. The beginning of humanity's true place in the galaxy. The other species see us as conquerors, but we're not. We're explorers, builders, creators. We're going to reshape the galaxy not through force, but through innovation. Jake nodded in agreement. The Thrakari had conquered through violence, the Vrex through economic domination, and the Lumina through ancient wisdom. But humanity would succeed through something different entirely. Any word from the deep space exploration missions? He asked. The HMS Discovery found something interesting in the Andromeda sector, Kate said. More ruins, but these ones are different. They're not just technology, they're something else. Something that might change everything we thought we knew about the universe. Should I be concerned? No, Kate said with a smile. You should be excited. Humanity is just getting started. The transmission ended, leaving Jake alone with his thoughts. Around him, the bridge crew went about their duties with quiet efficiency. These were the people who had volunteered for what they thought would be a suicide mission. And now they were the guardians of human space. Lieutenant Amy Foster looked up from her pilot station. Sir, we're receiving a signal from a Corvan merchant vessel. They're requesting permission to enter human space. Granted, Jake said, and provide them with an escort. An escort, sir? They're our guests now, Lieutenant. We want to make sure they feel welcome. Jake watched as the alien merchant ship approached, its crystal hull gleaming in the light of nearby stars. The crew of that vessel would return to their home world with stories of human power and generosity. They would tell their people about the advanced technology, the powerful weapons, and the fair treatment they received. The word would spread, as it always did. Humanity was not just strong, but honorable. They were not just advanced, but wise. They were not just conquerors, but protectors. The galaxy had laughed at humans because they had appeared weak and primitive. But humanity's true strength had never been in matching alien technology. It had been in transcending it entirely, in reaching back to their own forgotten past, and claiming a legacy that had been waiting for them all along. The laughter had stopped, replaced by respect born of awe and admiration. The species that had once dismissed humanity as insignificant now competed for their attention and approval. The galaxy had a new dominant power, and that power was guided by principles that none of the other species had ever considered. As the HMS Vengeance continued its patrol, Jake reflected on how much had changed. The ship that had once been humanity's desperate last hope was now just one vessel in a growing fleet. The technology that had seemed like magic was now being understood and improved upon by human scientists and engineers. The galaxy was vast and full of mysteries, but humanity was no longer afraid of what lay in the darkness between the stars. They had proven that even the most advanced civilizations could be surprised, that even the most powerful empires could fall, and that sometimes the greatest strength came from being underestimated. The age of human dominance had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same.